Meanwhile, there is an old topic that got told by a new face today in the U.S. government. It seems like Russia bashing has been in vogue for years now. So today, Biden administration's press secretary played along, in fact, with a reporter's question where he baited her to blast not only Russia, but all things Russia, including any reporting and any reporters who work on Russian TV. Here, I want you to take a look or listen for yourself.
I have not spoken with the president about RT or Sputnik. I think it's pretty factual to say they are tools of propaganda who work on behalf of the Russian government. I don't know that anyone would question that or raise your hand. I'm happy to discuss. But I've not discussed that with him specifically. I do know that when I was at the State Department, they attended the briefing. I had a little fun with them from time to time, but they attended the briefing. They asked questions, but I think there's no question as we're trying to decipher information that's accurate and inaccurate, it's important for the American people to know that there are outlets working on behalf of foreign governments who have an agenda.
So the point is, outlets on behalf of foreign governments have an agenda. Implication is that American journalists never have agendas. Joining us now is the host of On Contact, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist for, no less, the New York Times, Chris Hedges. Chris, just tell us what your impressions are of that statement that you just heard.
Well, this is part of the other side of the fake news industry, the self-delusion, the conspiracy theories. It just comes out of the Democratic Party establishment and has been coming out of the Democratic Party establishment since 2016 when they blamed their loss, Hillary Clinton's loss, on Russia, and everything has become Russia's fault. Hunter, the emails, which nobody's ever disputed on Hunter Biden's laptop as being, nobody's ever challenged the veracity of those emails as Russian propaganda. The New York Times calls the Podesta emails. John Podesta was the chairman of Hillary Clinton's election campaign. Those emails were leaked, published by WikiLeaks. Even the New York Times calls them disinformation. Again, that's not disinformation, blamed on Russia. Those emails are factual. The Director of National Intelligence report, I think it was 2017, devotes roughly 7 pages to RT and attacks RT for giving a voice to Black Lives Matter activists, anti-fracking activists, third-party activists, critics of empire. And that, I think, for me, was a kind of window into what they consider propaganda. Those are uncomfortable questions that they don't want asked. And so, those outlets like RT that give space to people like me to ask them are tarred with Russian being a sort of a mouthpiece for Russian propaganda. It's prop or not, if you remember that a few years ago, published in the Washington Post, anonymous website, targeted all sorts of left-wing sites, Black Agenda Report, Counterpunch, Truthdig, which doesn't exist anymore, which I wrote for. So yeah, that's become the knee-jerk response on the part of the Democratic Party establishment, in the same way that the right wing will blame things on Muslims, but both sides are deflecting attention from the really core issues of social inequality and political dysfunction that are gripping the United States.
Let's suppose that there's a point to be made that we at RT, and maybe even the international RT, is imperfect, okay? Fine. But taking it a step further, and then the implication that whatever imperfections we have are much worse. In fact, the media that she was talking to there in that press room at the White House, they have absolutely no guilt whatsoever in ever not telling you the real skinny on a story. It just seemed like there was something almost ironic about her sitting there telling people who went along with things like a war in Iraq, which we all know was based on lies, that they're completely honest and everybody else who works for a country we don't like is not honest. Oh, and if we, the government, say it, you as journalists have to back us up on this. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's the smugness, the arrogance of it. My old employer, the New York Times, sold us the war in Iraq, weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist. It spent 2 years slogging the Russiagate conspiracy. It just admitted that this 11-part series, The Caliphate, was based on testimony by a hoaxer, a fraudster. Yes, I mean, that's part of the inability on the part of the press to be self-critical and self-reflective. And the press has just become completely siloed. Even the New York Times now is essentially an organ of the Democratic Party in the same way that MSNBC is, NPR. We know that the Pew Center for Research ran a poll. 94% of the people who watch MSNBC identify as supporters of the Democratic Party. That's 87% NPR, 91% I think it was for the New York Times, and then the inverse is true for outlets like Fox. But that's very dangerous. So those of us who attempt to make an honest critique of the United States, an honest critique of empire, and look at the root causes for the malaise that has gripped the United States are dismissed by both sides. But right now, the Democratic Party is in power, and it's interesting that the Democratic Party tars both the right, whose opinions don't mesh with mine at all, and critics on the left with being manipulated by Russia.
Do you get a feeling when you hear her say that she's just saying what she truly believes, or is it something she feels she has to say? And I think we're down to about 30 seconds on this, Chris.
No, I think they believe it because, again, they're just not self-reflective. They live in their own media bubble. They don't really understand what's happening across the country, why people would storm the Capitol. I'm not defending it, but the rage that they have is a legitimate rage, being betrayed in particular by the Democratic Party, and I think they're just clueless.
Chris Hedges, as usual, great conversation. Thanks so much for your insight.
They're just idiots, morons.